Oh, gosh.
Okay, thanks for joining us for our Rainforest Writing Retreat, Write Club, Book Club for Writers. See, Chris, we don't edit stuff on this channel. Book Club for Writers. And this month we've been looking at how to write dazzling dialogue. Is mine reversed? Is that backwards?
No,
Anyway,
it looks good to me.
Hold up your TV to a mirror and you'll be able to see it's Dazzling Dialogue by James Scott Bell. We're led by Christine Tithridge, who's running the book club tonight. So take it away, Christine.
Hi, everybody. Glad that everybody could join us tonight. This has actually been a really, really good how-to book club, this particular one. And I think it's a really, really important one for everybody to learn, specifically for if you want to be picked up by a publisher. I think the first thing I picked up from listening to this for probably the 6th time was starting dialogue with crisp tense, which is really important. And I think we use that a lot in prose in general, but I think, no?
No, that was me. I just reversed it so that I can hold up and people can see it. And then something weirded me out about seeing my face reverse. Sorry, guys, continue.
Oh dear. Yes. So if anybody has anything, whenever I say talk about this stuff, if anybody wants to step in and have a chat, go for it, because I'm just going to ramble. So go for it. Put your hand up and have a chat. I think the next part I went on to that I took note of was thinking of speech as an action as well. So not just, I suppose, thinking of it if in the old cafe scene, think of it as an action, not just somebody speaking as well. And also, in saying that, further down the line, I've taken some notes on further down about that. We don't use everything that people say when we write dialogue. So if you are sitting in a cafe, which is a really good idea, by the way, to learning how to do dialogue, is to sitting down and eavesdrop on people in a cafe situation. But we don't write every single word that they say when they're talking. Do you agree, Charmaine?
Yeah. I think, look, one of the things I did love about this book, and if anyone else has anything they want to say, please do. But one of the things he said, I mean, it gets to the point for those writers out there who've read a lot of how to write books, you do get to that point where you're reading a lot more of the same thing all the time. But then every now and then, if you can find one thing in a book you haven't read before, it's refreshing. So he said he made it quite clear what the importance is of, don't start your story with a character sitting by themselves thinking about their problem. And I think it's that exposition way that we want to do that so that we can get it across to the reader. He says it's boring. Someone's just sitting around thinking, give them an action. And that helped with my short story that we did for the romance writing anthology, where I had my character starting off the story thinking about all these bad critiques she'd gotten for her story. And I thought, oh, wow, I've done that. That's terrible. So I went in and instead I rewrote the scene where we're in the middle of her getting the bad critiques. So I turned it into an action. So if you can take that thought and turn it into an action, it's much more engaging for the reader, I hope. We'll see. But theoretically, it's going to be much more engaging for the reader.
I actually agree with that. I think that's really good. That's interesting that came up, and that, because you're a well-written author too, right? So it's nice that we learn as we go, right? Everybody's still learning. I love that.
Always.
Always. And I suppose he also said, and I think this is around about the same time, he says dialogue is not real speech. You know, it's like when you watch TV and you never see an actor say, they're on the telephone and they never say hello or goodbye.
Yeah, those singer.
Goodbye. You never see that. So you wouldn't put that in your dialogue, because you really want to try and, especially I suppose with us being a group that writes a lot of short story, we try to reduce our word count. And that's what they want in dialogue. They want your dialogue to be reduced as much as you can. And I was just listening before, and what did they say? Get rid of the word well, like, yes, and no. I know, yes, like, and well. And I mean, there's always words in prose that we get rid of, and they're the ones that they say get rid of in dialogue, which I found really interesting. Yeah, right. So I thought, I'll write that down. Always trying to find new ways of picking stuff up. I did something I want to start trying to do tomorrow. And it was it was an exercise he said to do. And I hope I'm at home alone doing this just quietly. Turn the TV off and watch the ads. I don't know if you guys can remember this. And when they're speaking to each other, you have to create the dialogue that doesn't have to be the dialogue about what they're doing. It can be if you want to, and put your own dialogue in there. Make it up.
Do a voiceover.
Yeah, voiceover.
I don't know if you remember was it sort of the late 90s or mid 90s, that was a big trend where comedians were taking movies and they were cutting all the sound and they were just ad-libbing the voiceovers to them, and it was hilarious. Yeah.
I love that. I think, and I'm going to try that tomorrow. I think that's going to be so much fun. There was another section inside this book. On the audiobook, it was harder, and I haven't had a chance to write it down. And I will grab a copy now that I've listened through it again. But he does this list, I think it was of 20 or 30 different characters. And he wants you to pick 2 different characters. And every day you have to pick 2 characters that you have to go into their psyche, and you have to start talking to each, like you're going to be talking as both people. So, and you have to become those people. I'm not going to do that now because I don't know if I can. I don't know. I've never tried it before. So if you had a pirate and a Barbie doll talking to each other, and how would they talk to each other? What would they say? What would their mannerisms be? How would they, I think it'd be quite fun, but you only do it for 5 minutes, but every single day.
Yeah.
Oh, what was that? That was a weird something came through over. It was said at 8 p.m. or something. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a really interesting thing to do. He also said something about keeping a voice journal with a stream of consciousness in character's own voice. Print with questions. Okay, so this was my dot points. So have a voice journal with a stream of consciousness. Have 2 characters. Do you remember the morning journals we all used to do? We've all done
morning
it.
pages.
Morning pages.
I always try and get back to those.
Yeah, right. So this is similar to that. So it doesn't have to be your story, it just can be anybody. 2 characters, stream of consciousness. You give them a question for these 2 characters, and then you just write, and you write dialogue. You write dialogue, but you can also write prose, and you just let it go and see how you go with that. So it gives you something more than just morning pages. It gives you an opportunity of doing more in the dialogue arena, I suppose.
I liked how he gave his own examples too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think that was helpful. Yeah, you like that, Robert? Yeah. Did you like that character, Robert, that he used for his examples? The guy who just laughs at everyone?
Yeah.
He said to people, I thought that was really well done.
I found he was a very good voice actor for an audio book. And he said he was
Does he read the audio book?
Yes.
Is it read by him? Okay.
Yeah. He was an out of work actor. So, and he became a writer. So he wanted to be an actor. So
did he? Oh, I missed that bit.
He was an actor. Yeah, I read it I can't remember what part it was. Yeah, he wanted to be an actor. So anyway, he used to practice this all the time.
He writes extremely good guides for writing. This is not the only one I've read of his, and I recommend any
I
that
might
he's
just check
forward.
I might have just given you guys a bum steer. Just make sure that he
Well,
actually was the person who read
well,
it.
James, we just believe in our hearts. We feel that what you really wanted to be when you started out was an actor. But we're quite happy that you've progressed on to becoming a writer, and more importantly, a mentor with your writing guides. So you might not remember when you used to want to be an actor, but you did. You wanted to be.
Listening log, player settings, Mark. I'm just trying to see who actually was who wrote it. Not who wrote it, but
look in the
fastest
content.
way to
So while you have a
improve.
look there, we might have a look. Did anyone have any parts in particular that they found helpful?
It was narrated.
I haven't
Yeah,
read
Robin.
I haven't
Oh,
read it.
that's
so-
okay.
I
I
haven't
think
read it
we're
either.
probably intriguing you now because you really want to know who is the real James Scott Bell. So now you're really going to want to read it.
It was him that he read it. He did read it.
Yeah. Oh, great. He
narrated
does have
it,
a
yeah.
very good voice.
Yeah.
You can also check out any YouTube clips. If you search for James Scott Bell, you'll see a lot of YouTube clips on different interviews he's done about writing, but there's actually quite a few he's done about writing dazzling dialogue as well. So you can get the clip notes by checking out those YouTube clips. I also found it really interesting, his part about in every scene, every character has a role, and sometimes they switch between the parent, the child.
The child and the adult.
That's it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I thought that's
good.
really interesting. And it's a good way to make sure you're not putting both your characters in at the same level, because the dialogue has no traction then to move forward.
Mm.
So I thought that was quite helpful.
And the child doesn't always have to be the child character. The child can be the adult, because sometimes children are quite, the way that they
so
talk.
it's not literally a child.
I mean,
sometimes the child might have the parent role, and sometimes in that conversation.
There was a movie just recently, the name of it's just left me. And it was a child that was being looked after by a nanny, and the nanny was quite childlike, whereas the young girl would run the nanny around,
It
run her
wasn't
life.
like The Nanny, was it? Because that TV series is a little bit like that.
Something like that. But it was an interesting thing because it was taking those two characters, which you would normally think as a child and an adult, and just switched them. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And now that we're thinking about it this way now, and you're thinking, what can I do myself? Why can't we do that?
And it's quite realistic too. I mean, Christine, you've met my dad.
Yeah.
So even as a teenager, there were quite a few conversations that had to be had where I had to be the parent in that role, and he got to be the child, which is his favorite role anyway. So
I think it's a really, just listening to him giving you permission, I think, to do it. And I think we've all fallen into the trap of writing the bad dialogue. I think we all, and I think you have to write it. I think you have to have that moment where you write that bad dialogue, and we all do it. It's even in the first draft, right? We all write bad dialogue.
Because Christine, as someone who is a fellow writer in Queensland, and having known me since the second Rainforest Writing Retreat, which was 10 years ago to this day, and then actually helping us out with the Rainforest Writing Retreat all these years, that what I'm doing now is just exposition, and you already know that's the way I'm saying it. So I really like that point he brought up where he said, why would characters say stuff to each other that they already know?
Yeah. Well done. That is so true. And that's, I've got something here I wrote down. I actually was listening to this as I was driving, and it was that good that I pulled over and people had to around me. Anyway, it's he calls it an example of good dialogue, and it's, you're a liar, standing up looking back at him with dark, abashed eyes in a pinking face. I am a liar, she said. I've always been a liar. We don't brag about it. It's childish. His voice was good-humoured. Was there any truth in that yarn? She hung her head. dampness glistened in her lashes. Some, she whispered. How much? Not very much. And I thought, oh my God. Obviously, I didn't do I need really lots and lots of practice being an actor, but she's just come out and said she's a liar. She's always been a liar. She loves being a liar, but she's told everybody she's going to be a liar, and he's just accepted her being a liar. But the way that it was written as dialogue, and I don't know, it was, and even the telling us, standing up, looking back at him with dark, abashed eyes in a pinking face. So she's feeling a little bit embarrassed. Just beautiful. I just love it. I mean, it's old school dialogue. It's not probably stuff that we use so much now in the newer type of, but if you're writing a noir, it would fit perfectly. I love it. I just think it was brilliant. I'd had to write that down. And they said another one, if you're going to write dialogue, try and flip the obvious, as in, I do love you, John, enough to bath. And so instead of saying, I do love you, John, I've always loved you. So instead of saying that wishy-washy stuff, try and beef it up, make it different. So I do love you, John, enough to bath. So to put something in there that the reader's going to go, what? They'll just about to go to sleep, and you've just made them wake up. So just flip it around and make it funny. I think actually Debbie's very good at doing that. She's very good at putting the comic relief into dialogue and being able to flip the obvious in the dialogue and make it fun. And which is really, really, really important, I think. I
try.
You do. I really love reading your stuff.
But I just, when I type, I just like I say it. Like it's just, that's how I talk. It
comes into your head. And that's what he said. That's actually what you just said is what he says really, really important, and why we need to, as writers, need to practice saying this stuff out loud and having it in our head, because the stuff that we think is not always the way that it's supposed to be. It's how it comes out of our mouth.
And how it's taken sometimes.
Correct. Yeah, so I suppose it's practice. And then we've just got to trim it down to make it sound.
There's an interesting thing he said about that. He said, he was in a meeting once, and the chair said, all right, what don't we need in this agenda? And for me, that was really good, because, you tend to think that you should overwrite dialogue. And also because I work in an office, I noticed that too much gets said in a meeting.
Oh, and please stop asking, are there any more questions before we end this meeting? Because you've always got those regular people. Yeah. We're all like, okay. He had a good exercise in here that I haven't tried yet, and I think I might give this a go tomorrow. And that was to, generate a random number, pick up a book, find a page, generate a random line number, take a line, and then put it in a conversation with your character. Have your character say that line, even if it seems uncomfortable, and just see where it takes you. And he gave his example, and it took, his story in a really interesting direction. So
especially when they were talking about guns and things, and then there was a glass of wine. How do you do that? How do you put that in there? That was hilarious. But he really made it work. It was like, okay, I could see that. But again, I think it's a point of being able to shock the reader and getting them to notice, and it being, You know, it makes you stand out from the others. And I think that's what he's saying. It makes you stand out from just being another author to being a great author.
I like it.
But it also leads. Sorry, you go, Rob.
I like it how he used movie examples. Especially the Maltese Falcon. I really liked that.
Yeah.
How he
I do love that
adopted the
movie.
voices as well.
Yeah.
Because that all helps to like create character and voice, and you know, it actually helps with characterization dialogue as well. That's what I find, because how they talk and how they, you know, the mannerisms and
the syntax.
Everything creates your character, you know. So,
he was saying that being able to write down people's syntax, speeches and patterns and whatnot with your different characters, and if you see them on TV, write down that syntax. What are those? It's like when you listen to a Scot and they, what's the word? Is it? Oh, it's gone out of my head now. I've been watching. That's gone out of my head too. But they say a word. Is it when or something like that? And and I listen to it and I go, what the hell are they talking about? And it's just one of their words that you go, that's not right. Why are they talking like that? And then you just realize it's the word and or something. It's just not our word. I'll think about it, and when it comes to me, I'll say it. But I can't. It's gone. I had it on the tip of my tongue. It's gone.
But there's also like one of the things we did when I did my master's in TESOL, like like how different cultures enunciate words and the stresses they put on certain words as well. Like, so for example, in Australia, we go aluminium because we go aluminium, but in America, it's aluminum. They go aluminum. So the way that they say it versus the way we say it immediately is a dead giveaway of a culture, because you're saying it completely different to how someone else would say it.
But it's good to write those things down. Have a book with just dialogue and syntax, and how does a pirate speak? How does somebody from the 1920s speak?
Beck Timmis does pirate dialogue like I've never heard. Brilliant. And Rob's was good too for her Pig book.
But you can't find that stuff on you know, if you Google it, you can't find it. So you've got to listen to it.
Yeah. They used to have a thing on Facebook where they had a pirate function and you could change your whole page into pirate text.
Okay.
I love
They
that.
don't have it anymore.
I do love me not too thick guidebook, and I do love that this one is just focuses on that one topic. It doesn't meander too much. You can do the activities. So I have to say I like the structure of the book as well. A lot of people turn it into part biography, part book, and then it's a lot of waffle. And some people love that. You know, they really get involved in the author's life and stuff. I'm more like, tell me what I got to do, and he does that. So I think that is great. So I think the other thing was, did you want to go on to the top 10 things to watch out for when you're writing dialogue? You have a list there?
I've got a list here of the top 10 things. I have to admit that I didn't quite get to the end of that, but we'll talk about that, and maybe you guys can help out. So the top 10 dialogue issues, and this is his list, and the top one, which is my nemesis, and I will go back and read this again and read this again and read this again. And I might just buy the book and highlight it in yellow highlighter. And it's punctuation. Where to put I didn't know to put it M dash. So it's the M dash and the ellipses in dialogue in close quotations. I've never ever thought to put an M dash in a dialogue ever.
I feel like I use an M dash more than an ellipses. I think it's because that's where someone gets cut off.
Right. Yeah. And ellipses is a thought.
The others where you sort of just
thought gone off.
You might not finish, but
But I've never thought ellipses. I could see you using it in dialogue.
Yeah.
But I've never ever used an M dash. And anyway, I heard that and I thought, oh my God, that's really interesting.
See, I think
The three
Ellipses is the
dots.
three dots.
Like that means
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
your sentence is trailing off, but you don't really finish it. That's like
right.
my husband's favorite way of talking. He just never finishes a sentence, and we're all like,
But
okay.
that's a very common speech pattern as well, because we don't
Mm.
actually ever finish a sentence a lot of the
Yeah.
time in dialogue. You know, we just kind of go, yeah, that's right, eh?
Yeah. Gotcha.
But I think characters cut each other off a lot
Yeah.
too. So I think the M dash makes sense as well.
I was like, what?
Especially if you know them, right?
Like anything, I wouldn't overuse it though, because I think it'd get very tiring very quickly. So if you tend to, it's probably one I need to go and check how many M dashes have I put in here. So make sure I haven't overdone it.
A couple would be okay, but or one maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was I really enjoyed listening to that, because again, punctuation when I went through school was terrible. I'm just glad that Microsoft Word looks after a lot of that. But it's also something that I'd really like to learn and really be able to get better at. Number 2 was attributions, adverbs, and action tags. Go, Charmaine.
Yeah.
Go for Charmaine.
Okay. Can I just quickly say about the punctuation too, because dialogue does have a particular type of punctuation.
Yep.
And some people are uncertain on how to do that. I'm not going to read it out because it's the hardest thing to listen to, where the comma goes and where the closed quotation marks go. But in his book, he's got little examples in there for you. So if you're punctuating dialogue and you're not sure, open up either a novel that is published in the country that you are in, not in. So America and Australia have different punctuation rules for dialogue, but open up a novel that's like that and copy it. Copy the way the punctuation is done. Look where they've put the comma and the closed quotation mark, and just copy what they've done. And if you get his book, he does have examples for you to copy. But yes, moving on, we are on attributions, adverbs, and action tags. Okay, so I think that's the one where we talk about said is better than whispered, cajoled, you know. I agree, but I also almost never use said. Most of my stories don't have a dialogue tag. They have either the voice is clear enough that you know who's speaking if it's just one line each. But if it's a continuous dialogue, I'll have the person move, or I'll have some sort of presence around the person or an action that they're doing. So I'll have an action tag. And all that means, instead of saying Charmaine said, I might say, that's all you need to have Charmaine raised her glasses up her nose. So I'll give the person some sort of action that's relevant. Not if I have not mentioned they wore glasses for the whole novel and now I've done that, because that will throw people, but yeah, something in keeping with your character. And maybe showing them how they're feeling, especially if what they're saying is the opposite to how they're really feeling, then that can be a nice way of showing it.
And one of the first things I learned way back when with dialogue, one of the activities we had to do was write dialogue between 3 people and not use any attributions, anything, just use pure dialogue and make sure that everyone knew which character was saying what the whole time, and not just putting their name in there, but actually the actual context of how they were. And you could always tell which one it was. And
wow,
I really liked doing that. It was fun. It was actually good fun, and it was one I did with a mother whose son wouldn't take his medicine or stuff, and the other person was the doctor. You could just tell by what was being said who was saying what, and and it was challenging, because you, through pure dialogue with nothing else, not even action, nothing, just through the words of the dialogue. I'm not saying it was good, but it was, it was good to read back and say, yeah, I know who this characters are just by what they're saying.
Well, big tick from me. If they can understand who they were, then you did exactly what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and it can help. I have had an activity in the past where you might get 3 things that are identical, like 3 ants speaking to each other. And that way you've got to focus on the personality.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they're not unlike.
What a good.
Yeah.
And stay in that role. It's good.
I like that.
Sue Whiting did a workshop one time and had an activity where you had to take something that was you had to personify some non-living things and have a conversation between them. And I don't remember if it was what she suggested or just what I ran with, but it was like Pepsi, it was Coca-Cola, lemonade, and Fanta, and imagining that those 3 would have very different personality types. Yeah, so you can also do it with inanimate objects.
I like that.
Yeah.
We should do that one day.
To be interesting, a paperweight
Yes.
and a piece of paper, maybe.
Yeah.
One's got a headache.
Yeah.
It's feeling trodden on.
Yeah. And you think if you do it well, if you do it really well, it will stick, because in my mind, blackboards are always grumpy and impatient. They're always saying, hurry up. So if you do it well, it's going to stick in someone's mind forever.
Poor Mr. Squiggle.
So number 3 is dialects, which might be something you've already touched on there, Chris.
Talking about all the different
about dialogues, because I was of the understanding that you kind of didn't write in the dialect. So what did they say about that?
They said
to do it a little bit.
Just touch.
Less than realism, but just a touch, so that you remember that you don't forget that person is, is either from a different culture.
He did it in one example. He did a whole sentence, a whole dialogue sentence in full dialect, and then watered it down for the rest, but added bits and pieces of that dialogue in, so we knew what they were talking about.
I suppose it also depends how important the person's dialogue is to the story, because I remember in my studies, Wuthering Heights had this groundskeeper, and I could not work out what he was saying in any of his, but at the end of the day, it never affected the story for me. But he had some Welsh dialect, and it was so strong that reading it, I could not work out what he was meant to be saying. But didn't change the story for me.
How interesting.
So maybe in that way, it's good to have one character like that, because, it's a novelty. But
have you ever wondered to Google
sometimes
that?
I just keep over reading it
I'm
when
not
I'm
a curious person. Sorry, Robin, I think I spoke over you then.
I think it was mutual. Sometimes when you find it difficult, you get to a passage like that, my eyes just go flick past it.
Yeah.
If it's not really urgent, when it's not flowing, keeping the story flowing, my eyes just go past it. But I think that was part of the teacher training, where they taught us to speed read. Just look for the keywords and go through it. So any of those difficult names, sometimes it's like, otherwise it stops you when you start sounding out the name. That stops your reading.
Number 4 is backstory.
Backstory and dialogue. I actually want to go back and listen to that properly. I didn't quite get to that. So what does it say in there?
He's talking about when you're using dialogue to give out backstory. Obviously, you don't want it to be exposition.
Oh yeah, of course. That's in any story, isn't it?
But if
any part of the story,
if your character can share some things that can help, give the reader a bit of a background on the character. But I don't know if he's actually covered it, and he may have, but I like when backstory is dribbled. I don't really warm to that one where people will sit down and say, look, I know you know all this now, but here's what you didn't know. And then they give you the whole backstory in one go. I prefer getting hints so that I'm trying to work it out throughout the story. And I start saying, I think something's a bit fishy about what happened to him 2 years ago. And yeah.
I think as writers, we have to understand that readers are quite clever and they like to be clever. They don't like to be given the answer. They want to work it out. Yeah.
They've chosen to read rather than watch a movie. So they want to do some of the work.
Inner dialogue. Interesting. Are they talking about, I don't know what that is, inner dialogue?
Like when you're talking to yourself in your head.
Yeah. So can you do that in dialogue? You're just talking to
you
yourself.
You can have thoughts. Yeah. Well.
Probably the grammar would be different. That's all. The punctuation and the way it's written, I don't know whether head thinking and stuff would be written the same way as speech that's written.
Yeah, just italicized is good because it's easy to see.
Would you still use?
You don't want to be wondering, no, because otherwise you're wondering if it's said aloud or not. And obviously in the dialogue is to yourself. You can't have a conversation. Well, on the sci-fi, I know you expect us to all the time, Christine. but yeah, you don't usually have an inner dialogue with somebody else.
You gotta read my. I expect everybody to be able to read my mind. Come on. I can't say everything because it just doesn't come out. It's in there. It doesn't want to come out through my mouth. It gets stuck. Oh dear. Experimental. Oh, cursing. What do you guys think about cursing in dialogue?
Depends on the context, isn't it?
It does really. I know that in our sci-fi one, I use the word the F word in the Frankenstein story I wrote, but it needed it.
That's necessary.
Yeah. I think so too.
Showing the character.
I'm reading this book at the moment. It's a fantasy about thieves. And, with criminals, you don't expect them to
be prim and proper,
talk nicely all the time.
I agree.
Yeah, well, he does suggest you can find ways to work around using the curse words. He said even if you do have like a really rough character, that there are shows. He gives an example of Law and Order where they're prosecuting criminals, and obviously if you've met many criminals, the F-bomb might come out every second word, but they don't actually swear on it, and still they come across as rough. So he said there are workarounds if you want to do that. If you do want to use the curse word, I guess it's a little bit like the dialect. You don't have to do it to the realism where it's so often that you're getting tired reading it. You would want it will have less effect too, so you might want to sprinkle it through a little bit.
I remember reading Ben Elton's book, the one that's set like Big Brother. It's in the
I like that one
on the front.
Yeah,
see, I hated it because every second word the producer's saying is the C word. And I'm just like,
wouldn't.
oh, come on, like, and you're like hundreds of pages in and it's still there, and it's like, oh, I hated it.
Like, so I guess there's different. You can go for the level that you want to go for. Is basically saying, like, but you can tone it down a little bit so it doesn't get tiring.
You can make up your own swear word.
Well, that's the next thing I was going to say.
That you realise is expression of frustration or whatever.
Yeah, like Firefly. They use a combination of made up words with mixed in with Chinese words to create swear words, and they cuss all the time, but they're not real cuss words, so it doesn't offend anyone. Same intention. Yeah,
that's right.
I love that.
What's the next one?
The next one is, oh my god, thematic dialogue. What does that mean?
Well, the theme.
So you have people talking about whatever the theme of the story is. So if you've got a theme about about gender bias, then your dialogue will be written in such a way that will either back up this thematic preposition, or it will question it, because you want to do that sometimes. You don't want the theme. Your theme in your story is you raising a point, but you want that point at some stage in your story to look like maybe that's wrong, and then come back again. So sometimes you want to back it up.
It's about gender bias. It's that underlying theme that's running through the dialogue. It's the way they're talking to each other. It's like, it's obvious what they're doing through their speech.
And of course, if you want to see that theme work really well, just go and watch the Barbie movie again.
True.
So well, where it runs one particular way, and then it's flipped on its head, and then it's brought to some sort of balanced conclusion.
That was brilliant, actually. That's a really good analogy. I loved it. I love that particular. Yeah. Anyway, the next one is comic relief. Ta-da, Debbie.
What did I do? My internet went unstable.
We're on to comic relief in dialogue. The best way to do it.
I didn't read it, but okay.
No. We'll have a look at it.
Sorry. I keep freezing.
Yeah.
You do. So I guess it's just looking at, obviously you can't have every character being really witty, because they've all got to have their individual personality types.
Sorry.
But if you go back to some of the original duos and teams that did comedy, like Dean Martin and
Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis. Yeah, they don't play the same character. You know, Dean gets to play the straight man, and Jerry gets to play the goofy one. Yeah, so Dean will have funny lines too, but his are more like sarcasm or dry wit, whereas Jerry's would just be the big goofy laugh. So I guess it's about finding that in your character's dialogue as well.
Unless you're looking at the Three Stooges. Mind you, there was one in there that was
they
not
still
as
had three
funny.
different personalities.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They just all did silly things.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the Three Stooges. We don't have anything like that anymore. There's no more Jerry Lewis's or
Benny Hill.
Three Stooges, Benny Hills.
Hill,
There's nothing out there like that anymore.
No.
Yeah.
I guess we do from time to time.
Yeah.
But
we had Alan Sandler. He was good.
I'm trying to think of
Frank Woodley as well. Frank Woodley and
Mr. Bean is visual comedy.
He was hilarious. And who's the guy who did The Mask? What's his name?
That's what I was just trying to think of.
Jim Carrey. Yeah, I loved him too. He was great.
But all of those comedians are now turning to dark things instead, aren't they? Like, as I guess they're.
So did Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis went dark too there for a minute, and then he's got a movie called The Clown, The Day the Clown Died, about the gassing of the Jews. It's never been released. I've actually I've got the movie script. I bought it. But it's never been released. It's been put in a safe somewhere. He's passed away now, and they're actually talking about releasing it now. But it's sitting in the some French president's safe or something. But they do. Eventually they do all go, because they have enough of comic comedians.
Although we do get some of our darker actors,
trying
Robert
to
De Niro, who then switched to comedy. Robert De Niro is one of those actors for many years. People even mentioned they were a bit scared of being in a room with him because he was scary, because he'd done Taxi Driver, he'd done all these mafia movies. And then now suddenly he, does the Meet the Parents type thing and becomes a comedic actor.
Love it.
Yeah.
Good at it too. He's good at it.
Yeah. And I guess if you're an actor and you've done one type of role for a long time, it's like, as an author, when you're writing, they talk about branding, stick to your brand, but then you don't want to. You want to try something else, and why not?
There's
I
an
think a lot
episode of
There you go, Rob.
there's an episode of Seinfeld called The Jacket,
Oh yeah.
and every one of the writers and the actors were terrified of this one actor that they got to play Elaine's father. He was so intimidating, except for Jerry, who would go up to him because apparently he stole a knife from the set. And Jerry walked up to him in a break and said, "What's that you've got under your jacket?" Jerry Seinfeld's so either brave or stupid.
It can be both.
Yep.
Yeah,
Is it?
but so intimidating, this guy.
Yeah.
Why would they put him on if they were worried about him?
Well, that's the character they wanted.
Oh,
That
okay.
one, I remember.
Plus,
George
he was
saying, "Let's
such
just tell him we're scared and we want to go home."
Yeah, it was brilliant. And he was just such a good actor, but they were also intimidated by him.
Oh, so that was the character they were scared of.
No,
the
the
actor.
actor as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's what good actors can do, can't they? Not like
Yeah.
the
No, but this
you
guy
always
was
see the actor
just
like-
scary.
you always see that,
Yeah.
so you don't see the character they're playing in every film they do. But when they can actually make you think that person's so alive, that's really good acting. But like, there are some actors I think, oh yeah, I don't see that character, I just see the actor when they're actually acting. So getting characters, it's I would have loved to have been an actor and a singer and all those lovely things too, but can't be everything, can you?
No.
We're in another life.
Yeah, another life.
In another life.
That would be an interesting story. You could, you get two lives.
Restart.
Yeah, well,
Press the restart button.
Yeah.
We can do a Benjamin Button. Go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Start again.
that'd be nice. Shave a few years off.
Keep all the stuff we know so we don't have to go through all the stupid stuff.
And I think so the last one he had there was period dialogue, and he was talking about he hates when you write a story that's set in a certain period, but you make the language too contemporary, unless you're doing that on purpose. But where someone will just say something, you think they would not have said that back then. And sometimes now when people write historical fiction, even if they do write about the suppression of women, they tend to write it with the view from today looking back. It's quite difficult. And there was a brilliant theorist on postmodernism, and I'm trying to think of his name, but he said that we're just not able, we cannot today think about what it was like to live in the 1950s. We're not able to. We can only think from today's date, thinking about the 1950s. It's not genuine. Yeah, but even so, your nostalgia that you're remembering is from today looking back. And he says that you can't falsify, you can't force a reality. So you have to accept that it's a distorted reality. So if you're writing period fictions in today's world and you're setting it in period time, you are distorting that period, even if you're trying to be true to it. So
what was number 9?
Comic relief.
Comic relief. Yeah.
What was number 8?
Thematical dialogue.
Yeah.
What was number 7?
Cursing.
We just
And
didn't do it backwards.
we missed experimental.
Oh, okay.
I only have 9 written down.
Experimental. Do you have experimental written
no.
down? I know we missed experimental because I jumped it.
Okay.
Okay, let's see what he says about that.
I think I'm out.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So
Bye.
bye. So he was talking about when you're experimenting with different things with dialogue. There is a really good series called the Alone series, and I think the first book is called Survivor, and in that, I'm about to give a spoiler, so if anyone's like looking at getting into this series, which is from about 20 years ago, well, not quite that long, but don't listen. So in this story, it's a YA story where the protagonist is going to, with a lot of other schools, to the UN to talk about something, and they're in New York and they're on a train, and it's an Australian character, but there's a mix of cultures, and they've all made this little friendship group, and the train crashes, and him and his friends come up out of the subway, and there's something wrong, and it's basically a bit of a zombie story that people are reacting really badly and attacking you. And so him and his friends fled. They hold themselves up in an apartment, and they had to come out and venture to try and get food and stuff every now and then. It was really dangerous, and there's no dialogue tags for any other character, no quotation marks for any other character except himself. So there's quotation marks on his speech, but when the other characters speak, they don't put quotation marks on it. So spoiler alert, guys, as I said, if you want to read this, go listen now. At the end, you realize those kids died on the train right at the beginning. He kept them alive in his head with him as he escaped and stayed alive because he was alone, which is also in the title. It's Survivor, not Survivors, and it's the Alone series. And yes, so he kept them alive. So he had conversations with them, and they weren't really there. So there was no. So I guess that would be considered experimental. He's experimenting with the way that we use dialogue. He did cover that. He said that some people will do that just for no reason, but to be experimental, to try doing different ways of structuring the dialogue. The only problem is, as readers, we're used to one way, and it can be really frustrating trying to read a book that's just difficult to read.
Yeah.
So to think very carefully before doing that.
I had that when I was trying to write had a ghost as a character, and I didn't know how to put that in as dialogue. It was difficult. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've had an hour. So what I might do is I'll wind up the recording. You're quite welcome to hang around and have a chat. But I just want to say thanks for coming along. Definitely liked this one. Think that check it out as a guide if you'd like to improve your dialogue. It's a nice, easy read. James Scott Bell, How to Write Dazzling Dialogue. We will need to work on some stuff like that for our next retreat, Rainforest Writing Retreat. We have these how to write, these how-to book clubs. No, what do we call them? Book clubs for writers. I have to one day find out what we're called. Book Club for Writers by the Rainforest Writing Retreat. Our next retreat, we've had a date change. So if you're tuning in and you didn't hear it anywhere else, it is now June 21st to 23rd, 2024. We're at Cedar Creek Lodges in Mount Tambourine, and we're going to focus on writing for children for 2024. So check out rainforestwritingretreat.com and come along. All right, we'll say goodnight. Thanks, Christine. Thanks, guys. And feel free to hang around and chat. Bye to everyone else.